Imagine standing at the gate, passport in hand, ready to board the flight that could change your life. But in a heartbeat, your dreams come crashing down as a flight attendant snatches your ticket, accusing you of something you didn't do. What begins as a simple travel mishap soon spirals into a battle for justice, one that will force an entire airline to confront its darkest truths. Will you stand up when the world turns against you? This is the story of how one young woman's courage sparked a chain of events that no one could ignore. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Jada Matthews had been waiting for this moment for as long as she could remember. The summer camp in Los Angeles was more than just an opportunity to meet other bright young minds. It was a stepping stone to the future she had always dreamed of. At just 16 years old, Jada was already ahead of her peers. She was headed to a prestigious science camp, sponsored by one of the biggest tech companies in the world, where she would work on cutting-edge projects with other teens from across the country. She stood in the bustling Atlanta airport, a mix of excitement and nerves bubbling inside her. This was her first solo flight. The thought of traveling alone felt thrilling, but also a bit daunting. She had always dreamed of flying, of seeing the world beyond her small hometown in Georgia, and now that dream was coming true. She was headed to Los Angeles, a city she had only seen in movies and on TV shows. But there was more to her trip than just the excitement of the camp. Jada was determined to prove herself. She had worked so hard to get here, and this camp would help shape her future. Jada's mother, Lena Matthews, had always encouraged her to chase her dreams. Lena was a paralegal, sharp-minded, and fiercely protective of her family. Even though she couldn't join Jada on this trip, she made sure to remind her of the importance of staying calm and being brave. "You've got this, Jada. Just remember to carry yourself with dignity no matter what," Lena had texted her earlier that morning before Jada boarded the plane. Jada smiled at the memory of her mother's words, feeling a sense of strength knowing that her mom had her back, no matter where she was. The airport was full of people. Business travelers rushing to their gates, families chatting excitedly about their vacations, tourists with wide eyes as they stared at the signs above. Jada marveled at how all these lives collided in one space. She felt like she was a part of something bigger, a tiny piece of the world puzzle. It was easy to get lost in the sea of faces, but Jada felt a surge of determination. This was her moment, and she was going to make the most of it. After checking her flight status one last time, she made her way to Gate 12, her hands shaking slightly as she clutched her boarding pass and carry-on bag. The excitement of the day was almost overwhelming, but she kept her focus. There was a little bit of anxiety in the air as she waited, but she tried to stay calm thinking about the camp ahead. She could already picture herself working alongside other teens, learning about new technologies and building things she had only read about in books. As she found a spot to sit and pulled out her phone to send a quick message to her mom, she noticed a woman in a flight attendant uniform walking toward the gate. Sharon Bellamy was tall and striking, with blonde hair perfectly pinned up. There was something about her that immediately caught Jada's attention. She carried herself with a kind of authority, and her gaze seemed to sweep over the waiting area, scanning the crowd. Jada looked away, feeling a strange shiver run down her spine. She couldn't quite place it, but something about the way Sharon looked at her made Jada feel uneasy. Sharon's eyes briefly met Jada's, and Jada quickly turned her attention back to her phone, shaking off the odd feeling. She told herself that it was just nerves, nothing more. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the discomfort that lingered in her stomach. She had always been a good judge of character, and something about this flight attendant didn't sit right with her. However, Jada wasn't one to judge people based on a fleeting glance. She believed in giving others the benefit of the doubt, so she decided to push the feeling aside. As she sat back in her seat and waited, Jada tried to relax, watching the people around her. The sounds of the airport filled her ears, the faint hum of announcements, the soft chatter of passengers, the clinking of luggage being moved. For a brief moment, Jada allowed herself to drift into daydreams about the camp. She imagined meeting people who shared her passion for science, creating new inventions, and maybe even changing the world. Her heart swelled with excitement at the thought. But that moment of peace was short-lived. Jada stood up to stretch her legs and grab a bottle of water from the nearby vending machine. As she made her way back to her seat, she noticed Sharon once again, this time in a heated discussion with another gate agent. Jada couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see the sharp gestures and the serious expressions on their faces. Something wasn't right. Jada's mind raced with questions. Had she seen something? Heard something? She couldn't be sure. The moment she returned to her seat, Jada's focus shifted back to the boarding process. The line at the gate had started to form, and she was relieved to see that it was almost time to board. She was ready. Ready for the next chapter of her life. Ready to take off on her own and prove that she belonged. As the line moved forward and Jada approached the gate, she felt the surge of anticipation. This was it. But then, just as she was about to hand her boarding pass to the gate agent, Jada saw Sharon again. This time her gaze was fixed firmly on Jada. Without warning, Sharon reached out and snatched Jada's ticket from her hand, announcing loudly that the ticket needed to be verified. Jada's heart dropped into her stomach. She froze. The line of passengers behind her fell silent. She felt every eye on her, the weight of their gazes heavy and uncomfortable. This wasn't just a routine check, it felt personal. The tension in the air was thick as Jada stood there, stunned and confused, watching as Sharon walked off with her ticket. Her mind raced, but the words wouldn't come. Her excitement for the camp suddenly felt like a distant memory, replaced by a sense of dread. The moment Jada had been waiting for, the moment that was supposed to be filled with hope and possibility, was now overshadowed by something else, something she couldn't yet understand. And so Jada stood there, waiting, trying to stay calm, not knowing that this was just the beginning of a much bigger challenge, one that would test her in ways she never expected. Jada stood at the gate, her heart pounding as she watched Sharon Bellamy walk away with her boarding pass. She felt a cold knot form in her stomach. It had all happened so quickly. One moment she was excited and eager to board her flight to Los Angeles, and the next, she was being singled out, her ticket questioned by a flight attendant who hadn't even bothered to explain why. The confusion was overwhelming. But what struck Jada the most was the way Sharon had looked at her. There was something in that glance that felt more like an accusation than a routine check. She tried to stay calm, taking deep breaths and reminding herself that everything would be okay. After all, her ticket had been scanned earlier and she had done everything by the book. Yet as the minutes ticked by, the uncertainty gnawed at her. The quiet murmurs from the other passengers only made things worse. Jada could feel their eyes on her, some sympathetic, others curious, but all of them watching, waiting for what would happen next. The gate agent, Margot, had tried to intervene, but it was clear that her attempts to soothe the situation were falling flat. She kept glancing nervously at Jada, but there was little she could do to change what was happening. Jada wanted to speak up, to ask why this was happening, but the words wouldn't come. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, and all she wanted was for it to be over. But it wasn't. After what felt like an eternity, Sharon finally returned, holding Jada's boarding pass with a cool, dismissive air. Jada's heart sank. She knew the ticket was fine. She had checked it herself. But something about the way Sharon handed it back to her made Jada feel like she had done something wrong. It wasn't just about the ticket. It was about the way Sharon had treated her, the way her actions had made Jada feel small, unimportant, as though she didn't belong. Jada forced herself to take the ticket, her fingers trembling as she clutched it in her hand. She wanted to say something, to stand up for herself, but the words didn't come. She just nodded and stepped forward, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling that seemed to cling to her. The last thing she wanted was to cause a scene, but deep down she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about the ticket. It felt personal. It felt like something more, something that had nothing to do with her and everything to do with the way people saw her. As she walked toward the jetway, Jada could feel the eyes of the other passengers still on her. Some avoided her gaze, while others looked at her with a mixture of sympathy and discomfort. It was as if they could all sense that something was wrong, even if they didn't fully understand what had happened. Jada's mind raced as she boarded the plane. What had just happened? Why had she been treated like that? She had done everything right. She was just a kid, traveling to a camp that was supposed to be the opportunity of a lifetime. Why was this happening to her? She found her seat in economy class, the hum of the plane's engines filling the air as the rest of the passengers boarded. She sat down, her heart still heavy, her mind racing. The excitement she had felt just moments ago was now overshadowed by the events at the gate. She tried to focus on the seatbelt sign, the safety instructions, anything to distract herself from the storm of thoughts swirling in her head, but nothing worked. Every time she closed her eyes, all she could see was Sharon's disapproving stare, the way she had made Jada feel as though she was somehow guilty of something she didn't understand. The plane began to taxi down the runway, and Jada felt the familiar pull of gravity as it lifted off the ground. She gazed out the window, watching the sprawling city below shrink as they soared into the sky. But even the comforting view couldn't calm the turmoil inside her. The voices in her head were loud now, questioning everything. Why had this happened? What was wrong with her? Was it really just a mistake, or was there something deeper at play here? As the plane reached cruising altitude, the flight attendants began their rounds, offering drinks and snacks to the passengers. When it was her row's turn, Jada braced herself. She could feel Sharon's presence in the aisle, could sense the coldness in the air as she made her way down the plane. When she reached Jada, Sharon's smile was forced, her voice flat. "What would you like to drink?" she asked. The words more of an obligation than a genuine question. Jada hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond. She wanted to ask Sharon what had happened at the gate, wanted to demand an explanation for the way she had been treated, but she knew it wouldn't make a difference. It would only make things worse. So instead, she muttered, "Ginger ale, please," trying her best to sound normal, to act like everything was fine, even though nothing felt fine at all. Sharon poured the drink with mechanical efficiency, the liquid sloshing over the rim of the cup and spilling onto Jada's hand. Jada winced but said nothing. Sharon didn't apologize, didn't even acknowledge the mistake. She simply moved on to the next passenger without a second glance. Jada wiped her hand with a napkin, her mind reeling. It was as if Sharon was trying to make her feel invisible, to diminish her in every way possible. Jada knew she couldn't let this go. She couldn't let Sharon's actions define her. But it was hard. It was hard not to feel small, hard not to feel like the target of something she didn't deserve. The rest of the flight was a blur. Jada tried to focus on the movie on the small screen in front of her, but it was impossible to escape the feeling of unease that clung to her. She kept thinking about her mom's words. Stay calm, carry yourself with dignity. But dignity felt hard to hold on to when the world around her seemed to be working against her. When the plane finally landed in Los Angeles, Jada was relieved, but she still couldn't shake the feeling of injustice that had settled in her chest. She had been treated unfairly, and it wasn't just about the ticket. It was about the way people saw her, the way they judged her before even knowing her. But Jada knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let this moment define her. She would carry herself with dignity no matter what. And when she stepped off the plane and into the bright California sunshine, she made a promise to herself. This wouldn't be the end of the story. Jada had hoped that when she boarded the plane, the ordeal at the gate would be behind her, but even as the plane ascended into the sky, the weight of what had happened remained. The discomfort from the way Sharon Bellamy had treated her lingered in Jada's mind, gnawing at her. She couldn't help but replay the moment over and over, again wondering if she had done something wrong, wondering if the way Sharon had looked at her was really just a mistake or something more. But deep down she knew it wasn't just a mistake. Something had happened that wasn't right, and it wasn't just about the ticket. Her mind kept returning to that moment, the moment when Sharon had snatched her boarding pass, treating her like she didn't belong. Jada had never been one to shy away from confrontation, but this felt different. It felt like something bigger than just her personal experience. It felt like a reminder of the world's unfairness, something many people faced every day but never talked about. On the plane, Jada's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her mom, Lena Matthews. "How are you doing, baby? Is everything okay?" Jada hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen as she thought about what to write. How could she explain what had happened? How could she put into words the humiliation and confusion she had felt? But she knew her mom would understand. So she typed, "Something happened at the gate. A flight attendant took my ticket, said it needed to be verified, and acted like I wasn't supposed to be there. It was really uncomfortable. I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't feel right." Lena's response came quickly. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Jada. That's unacceptable. We're going to get to the bottom of this, don't worry, I've got your back." The words were comforting, but Jada felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. She appreciated her mother's support, but she also didn't want to cause trouble. It was hard to shake the feeling that she should just let it go to avoid making things worse. But as the flight continued, the reality of the situation began to set in. This wasn't just about a rude flight attendant. This was about something deeper. Something that people like Jada, people of color, had to face all the time. It was about prejudice, about being judged before even being given a chance. And she wasn't going to let it slide. This wasn't just her battle. It was a battle that others faced too. If she stayed silent, nothing would change. Back in Atlanta, Jada's mother was already taking action. As a paralegal, Lena knew how to navigate the system. She knew how to make her voice heard. And she wasn't going to let this incident go unnoticed. She called Delta Airlines' customer service line, demanding answers. She explained what had happened, the way her daughter had been treated, and how it wasn't just an isolated incident. Lena didn't stop there. She knew that a single phone call wouldn't be enough. She pushed for an internal investigation and insisted that the airline take responsibility for the actions of their staff. Meanwhile, the video of the incident at the gate had already started circulating on social media. A passenger who had witnessed the entire exchange had recorded the moment when Sharon had taken Jada's boarding pass, and the video quickly went viral. People were outraged, commenting on how unfair and discriminatory the behavior was. "How could this happen in 2025? One person wrote. "This shouldn't be happening to anyone, especially not to a young girl on her way to an important event." Jada had heard the murmurs of support from the other passengers on the plane, but now, the world was taking notice. The video had sparked a wave of outrage, and Jada was beginning to realize just how powerful her story had become. It wasn't just about one incident at one airport. It was a reflection of a larger issue that needed to be addressed. People were starting to speak out, to demand accountability, and Jada felt a mix of pride and anxiety. This was bigger than she ever imagined. Lena wasn't alone in her fight. She reached out to Marcus Doyle, a friend who worked in public relations and who had experience dealing with crisis situations. He advised Lena on how to handle the media attention and make sure the airline was held accountable. They discussed strategies for keeping the pressure on Delta, ensuring that the company couldn't sweep the incident under the rug. Marcus made it clear that this wasn't just about getting an apology. It was about pushing for real change. "They need to take responsibility," Marcus said during their call. "This kind of behavior can't be tolerated, and it needs to stop. If we don't make a stand now, it'll just keep happening." Lena agreed. She knew this wasn't just a fight for her daughter's dignity. It was a fight for every person who had ever been made to feel small because of the color of their skin. She wasn't going to let Delta get away with it. She wasn't going to let them dismiss her daughter's experience as just another complaint. Jada, for her part, was trying to stay focused on the camp. She wanted to put the whole incident behind her and enjoy the opportunity that had brought her to Los Angeles. But every time she checked her phone, there were more messages, more people reaching out to her. Reporters, activists, even people she didn't know, all offering support. Some wanted to interview her, others just wanted to share their stories of similar experiences. Jada was overwhelmed. She wasn't sure how to handle all the attention, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't alone in this fight. By the time Jada arrived at the innovation camp, the situation had escalated. Delta had been forced to issue a statement acknowledging the incident and promising an internal investigation. But the public was demanding more than just words. They wanted action. They wanted to see that the airline was taking responsibility, that they were committed to making real changes. And Jada, despite the anxiety that gripped her, felt a strange sense of empowerment. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about standing up for what was right, for making sure no one else had to go through what she had endured. Jada knew that things weren't going to change overnight, but for the first time, she felt like her voice mattered. And that was enough to keep her going. The days after the flight were a whirlwind for Jada. She had hoped to forget the incident at the airport and focus on her innovation camp in Los Angeles. But the story had taken on a life of its own. The video of her confrontation with Sharon Bellamy had gone viral, sparking outrage and demanding action from Delta Airlines. Jada's phone buzzed constantly with messages, support from strangers, calls from reporters, and even offers from social media influencers wanting to help spread her story. While she appreciated the support, the constant attention felt overwhelming. All she wanted was to focus on her camp, but reality had a way of forcing itself into her life. The camp was incredible. It was everything Jada had hoped for, and more. She was surrounded by other bright young innovators who shared her passion for science and technology. The hands-on projects, the thought-provoking discussions, and the opportunity to learn from experts in the field made her forget, even for a moment, the drama surrounding her flight. But still in the back of her mind, the injustice she had faced at the airport lingered. Jada had expected her time at the camp to be filled with excitement and creativity, but it had also given her the space to reflect. She realized that the fight she was now a part of wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had ever been treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. It was about raising awareness of the everyday prejudices that people often overlooked. And more than anything, it was about ensuring that such behavior would no longer be tolerated. Meanwhile, Lena Matthews, Jada's mother, had been working tirelessly behind the scenes. As a paralegal, Lena knew how to handle legal matters, and she was determined to ensure that the airline was held accountable. She had filed a formal complaint with Delta and demanded an apology, but she didn't stop there. Lena pushed for policy changes within the airline. She knew this wasn't just about a single incident. It was about the systemic issues that allowed such behavior to go unchecked. She made sure to stay in contact with Delta's corporate office, demanding regular updates on the progress of the investigation. "We're not just asking for an apology, Lena," Marcus Doyle, a friend who worked in public relations, had said during one of their conversations. "We need real change. If Delta doesn't act, the public will hold them accountable." Lena agreed. They both knew that the public outcry had put pressure on Delta, but they needed to ensure that this wasn't just a quick fix. It had to be a permanent change, something that would prevent incidents like Jada's from happening again. They needed to push for diversity training, better employee screening, and a thorough review of the airline's policies. Finally, after days of anticipation, Delta made a statement. They had placed Sharon Bellamy, the flight attendant, on administrative leave while they completed their investigation. The airline also announced that the entire crew from Flight 2745 would be reassigned, pending the outcome of the review. But the most important part of the statement was the promise to implement new diversity and inclusion training across all staff. It wasn't the swift resolution that Jada had hoped for, but it was a start. When Jada learned of the developments, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The airline had taken the first step toward accountability. The whole crew had been replaced, and Delta was finally acknowledging that something had gone wrong. But for Jada, the fight wasn't over. She knew that accountability wasn't just about firing one person. It was about changing the culture, making sure that such prejudices didn't have a place in the airline industry or anywhere else. Jada's experience had already led to a shift within Delta. The airline's executives were now under pressure to prove that they were committed to real change. But what surprised Jada the most was the level of support she received from strangers. People who had seen the video and shared it. People who had spoken out against the discrimination she had faced. The public's response gave her hope. It reminded her that even in the face of adversity, people could come together and demand change. A week later, Jada and her mother were invited to a meeting with Delta's senior management. The airline's chief diversity officer and the vice president of customer experience were among those present. The meeting started with an apology, a sincere apology for the way Jada had been treated. The executives acknowledged that what had happened was unacceptable and promised that they were taking steps to ensure that nothing like it would ever happen again. Jada listened quietly as they spoke. She appreciated the apology, but she wasn't satisfied. She knew that words weren't enough. She needed to see real action. "I understand that you're making changes," Jada said, her voice steady. "But I want to make sure that these changes aren't just for show. I want to know that this will make a difference for other passengers in the future." The chief diversity officer nodded. "We understand, Jada. We are committed to making real change. We are not just looking at this as an isolated incident. We're looking at it as an opportunity to rethink how we handle diversity, inclusion, and customer service." Jada felt a sense of empowerment. She wasn't just a victim of an unfair situation. She was now part of the solution. Her voice mattered. And as the meeting concluded, Jada realized that this was only the beginning. There was still work to be done, but she was ready to continue the fight for fairness, equality, and justice. After the meeting, Jada felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had spoken up and her words had been heard. But more than that, she had sparked a conversation, one that was bigger than her. It was a conversation about the power of standing up for what's right, even when it feels uncomfortable. It was a conversation about the importance of using one's voice to create change. As Jada left the meeting with her mother, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just a teenager traveling to a camp. She was a young woman who had faced injustice and was determined to make a difference. The journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but Jada knew she wasn't alone. She had the support of her family, and now she had the strength to continue fighting for what was right. The story of her encounter at the airport had turned into something much larger, and Jada was ready to embrace it. Her fight for justice had only just begun.